My friend is urging me to start. So thanks very much again for joining this webinar. My name is Karol Kocjan. I work for Aspire Systems Poland, and I would like to speak to you about fixed price and time and material contracts. Their advantages, their disadvantages, their risks for IT projects. The subject, I guess, might be a little bit old in a way. So I know that a lot of things have been said about this. Nevertheless, I have 14 years of experience in the IT industry. My role is directly related to dealing with project billing methods, project billing models. So I hope that you get at least one new thing out of this webinar. Hopefully it will be more. Before we start, let's settle some organizational topics. So first of all, could you please let me know if you can see the presentation? There is a title slide showing, and if you can hear me well. If you do, could you please send a message to the chat window, please? Okay, Tamas can certainly hear me, so that's good news. I understand the rest is the same for the rest. So on the other screen, I've got my presenter's notes. Dominic Vantuch, who invited you to this webinar. Dominic, could you please let me know if there's, for some reason, any disturbance in the force? So I should stop because I won't be able to observe the chat window all the time. I won't be able to have a look at the chat window all the time. Okay, so second organizational thing is that I think this presentation will last approximately 30 minutes. There will be some time left for discussion. Then please, if you have any questions in the meantime, we will discuss them after the presentation. Please write these questions down to the chat. So please use the Microsoft Teams chat option to state your queries. The presentation is being recorded to inform you. If you're okay with it, you're more than welcome to stay. If you have any objections, then unfortunately you have to disconnect. But I hope there's no objection for you to record the presentation. Last but not least, I have a classical pandemic issue. So there's a delivery guy coming. There's a very small chance that he will turn up during this presentation, but still there's a 10% chance that he will do. So if that this happens, I will inform you. I will stop the presentation for a while. So please accept my apologies in advance if that seldom rare occurrence happens. So as I said, I work for Aspire Systems Poland. Aspire Systems, I'm not sure if you've heard about the company, is a global software engineering company with over 4,200 experts, IT experts on board. We have offices in India, Poland, Mexico, US, the Netherlands, Singapore, and several other locations. And we focus on software engineering, digital services, testing, and infrastructure and application support. You can see that our motto is attention always. As for myself, as I said, I don't want to blow my trumpet too much, as it says in the slide, but in order to for you guys to have some more transparency of who I am and what I do, I work as a consulting manager and sales enablement lead in Aspire Systems Poland since 2021. My previous roles in IT include data analysis. I used to be a team lead. Then I moved on to business analysis and walk through multiple stages of business analysis from a senior to a lead business analyst in several IT companies in the region, but not only. Since this is something I like to talk about when I'm talking about myself, IT actually made me work in 4 different places in the world. So I've spent at least 5 months in each of these cities. So in Gdańsk, Manchester, Hong Kong, and Zurich in Switzerland. So definitely one of the benefits of being a person working in the IT sector. Right. Okay. So before we move on to the very topic, let's have a bit of a warm up for your brain and your fingers. Could you please let us know in the chat window whether you have ever participated in any role in a fixed price project, preferably in IT? So if you have, then please communicate it in the chat, whichever way you want to communicate it. And second warm-up question is a bit more problem-based. Do you think that a banking system should be delivered using a fixed price or a time and material model? This assumes that you know the basics of both models. So please do let us know in the chat window. I think it will be really nice to read what are your opinions about this. Right. In the meantime, let me move on to the agenda. So this is the agenda for the meeting. We'll start by speaking a bit about theory. So what are the pricing models used by software houses? Then we'll move on to, let's say, a carefully selected set of risks. So I tried to select them based on the experience I have and things I consider to be most original, comparing to all the risks that are related to these 2 pricing models according to the classic books. So I tried to cherry pick the less obvious stuff. Meanwhile, let's then try to find out in which conditions each of the model works the best way. And last but not least, I will address the risks and propose some risk mitigation methods related to usage of these 2 models. So let's rumble. Okay, so as an introduction, so sometimes you need something you simply cannot buy, something that doesn't simply have a price tag, and a thing that needs to be priced individually. So software is a perfect example. And software houses distinguish between fixed price and time and material payment models, as well as a continuum of hybrid models, which have special provisions added based on the basic 2 models and that are used to address specific risks. This presentation is meant to help you to realize what you, as a buyer, let's put yourself in the shoes of a purchaser of such service, what you as a buyer should realize before putting your pen to the paper. So risks, advantages, just like the title of the webinar says. So here are a few things more or less obvious. Try to be them less obvious that you may help you to find the right formula for your project. So first, a bit of theory. So fixed bid, fixed price project. It's without giving a book definition, but let's imagine that you want to strike one of those fixed price projects. This means that you know exactly what do you want to buy upfront and your business partner, so the organization that will be responsible for delivering this, will know how much exactly it will cost you, or at least they pretend they know. This assumes that your business partner has perfect understanding of the prices and the conditions on the market, as well as the costs of labor, which is particularly important in IT. What does a bike do here? So let's imagine that your project that you need to involve in is about building a time trial bicycle. So here's an example of a time trial bicycle. Product placement is purely accidental over here. So if you're a bike fan, don't feel offended that I used Shimano group sets instead of SRAM group sets, for instance. So in this case, if that's a fixed price project, you know exactly which parts you want to use for your time trial bicycle for your TT and how to configure your bike. Thanks to this, you're able to estimate exactly the price of the project and the cost with the high degree of certainty. The second basic model is a time and material model, right? This means that the payment compensates the hours of work needed to finish a given project. And by the execution team, requirements may be defined up front, but they are not set in stone, right? They only indicate what potentially could be done. You either don't know exactly what you want to do, or you expect changes in the future. And second possible situation is that your supplier has the expertise in this topic, and you want to rely on your supplier's expertise a little bit more in order to design the product together with you. So again, coming back to the time trial bicycle, you know what do you expect from the bicycle in T&M, in time and material, and you have no budget limitations, which sounds quite comfortable, right? And you compensate your payment will be a function of material used and the time spent in order to put the bicycle together. And the third model I want to mention over here, this is the most common hybrid model. It's the fixed budget model, and also called agile fixed price project, or a T&M with CAP. This means that you have your scope is known upfront, but it's again not set in stone. It can be changed. Nevertheless, you have a budget limitation, and you don't want to exceed that budget. And certain clauses in the contract will state who covers the differences, the difference if the budget is exceeded or if the budget is not fully used. And coming back to the bicycle, you know, in this example with for T&M with CAP, you know what you expect from the bicycle, just like T&M, but you do have a specific budget limitation. What is very difficult over here is that since you don't have a full plan, but you have a specific budget, you need to be very careful in every step of your project to predict how much budget is left against which needs have not been met yet. So I think it's a hybrid model designed to make things easy, but it doesn't mean it's really easy, right? That it's very easy. Okay, so enough about theory. So yeah, before you choose your billing model for the project, let's talk about a few specific risks and limitations related to the choice that you are going to make. So the first one, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, is that the only constant thing in the world is change. So humans, this also arises from the fact that humans have limited capability to comprehend big concepts. And that's why very often change happens. I challenge you to tell me if you have ever planned anything, any activity larger than a week of work and executed it 100% exactly the way you wanted to execute it. So if you have had such a case, chapeau bas, my respect. I honestly have to say I haven't, right? So what's the conclusion over here is that you need to account that change will happen. There is a nice piece of research I found on the web. It will be linked in the presentation after this webinar. And Rolls-Royce, the famous UK engineering company, wanted to design a gas turbine engine control system. And research after that showed that 50% of the requirements changed in due course of the project. Only 16% out of these 50% of changes were driven by the customer. I'm saying I underline that for one particular reason. As a former business analyst, I know that we in IT have a tendency to say that customers have a tendency to change their mind without necessarily deep diving into why they want to change their mind. And if 16% only was changed due to customers changing preferences, this means that the remaining 84% was a result of changes in the surrounding, in the ecosystem, right? In the design of the surrounding parts. So this means that it's not purely human nature that drives the change, but also what's happening around you and the as I said, the ecosystem, right, of your device. Interestingly, Bell Labs and IBM, that's a different study actually, but the number is also sparking the imagination, conducted a study which determined that 80% of all product defects were incorporated in the requirements definition phase. This means that if you have your requirements wrong at the beginning, you're gonna, well, it might be it will be a simplification, but you may increase the number of defects in the testing stage later on by 5 times, right? So the conclusion here is the model that you need to choose, and the bigger the undertaking is, the more likely it is to change. So make sure that the model you choose is change friendly. And as it was said at the very in the theory slides, fixed price model isn't necessarily change friendly, right? Regardless of how we look at this, it assumes that things are defined up front, and the conclusion from these slides and from these pieces of research says that people are not fully able to define things up front. But if you really need to be fixed price, your management pushes you to define the budget up front. How to check if a fixed price project could be the right choice and be efficient. And coming back to the previous slide, the bigger the undertaking is, the more likely it is to change. So the conclusion here is that if you want to go fixed price, you'd probably want to do it for small pieces, or define divide your project into smaller chunks, or do it only for smaller pieces of work, right? So if you really need to check how small is small, meaning if your project is small enough to be defined upfront, you can use two methods that I personally use if I want to resolve this problem. So the first one is a comparison of two estimations. First, I high-level estimate a piece of work. I take a risk provision and apply that to the estimation without deep diving into the details. And then I ask the team I'm working with to decompose a sample epic that was estimated into low-level stories with acceptance criteria and estimate them. If there is a deviation, this signifies that the high-level estimation is simply not relying on a well-informed enough set of information, and this implies that you will start discovering stuff along the way as you go with the project. Method two, I like to compare two estimations from two independent groups, and if there is a deviation, I try to find a reason for the deviation. And here I would like to underline this finding a reason. This does the fact that there is a deviation doesn't necessarily mean that the project is not small enough, because the deviation may arise from the fact that one of the groups was cooperating better, and the other group was having communication problems, or the room was too dark, so they weren't creative enough, or they just wanted to go home because it was 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So please take the external factors into account. But if there is a deviation, you may come to the conclusion that the project can be understood in a very ambiguous way. But let's get back to the good old theory, and let's get back to the factors that should drive your decision. Please remember that fixed price projects generate hidden costs. The first one is actually what I call constantly pulling the line. What I mean here is there is a very formal process, and there is a budget decision and budget implication behind every change. In T&M, there is one as well, but in fixed price, this, let's say, hurts a little bit more. And the teams spent a lot of time deciding who's going to cover the change, right? If something was written between the lines in the scope, or could it be understood this or the other way? There are semantic discussions, and those semantic discussions not necessarily always bring us closer to the conclusion of the project, but they eat time. So that's actually, and this is something I observed in my own experiences with fixed price projects as well as my team's experiences. This drove us to generating us and them mentality. People started putting up barricades, right? Saying they said, they wanted, they claim, they insisted, right? Instead of saying us, and thinking about vendor and the ordering company as one team who needs to aim shooting the ball into the same goal. Also, one thing that was apparently pretty striking is that people claimed that such barricade situation was not very healthy for their mental state. And I had cases of attrition in my team after a person was really tired with exchange of arguments between the client and us as a software vendor. So thirdly, as well, software vendors may observe more challenges when hiring people for fixed price projects. Eventually, they may have to pay more to people, and don't be fooled. This will be certainly reflected in the price that they quote. Okay. On the other hand, time and material requires constant involvement, right? So fixed price projects are, at least in theory, fire and forget projects. They are tasks are defined up front. For time and material, you need to be on the top of your game constantly throughout the whole project. But you'll be better off thanks to this. So without your presence in the project, the software engineering team will quickly lose sight of the project vision. They will feel abandoned, and you may lose track of the project as well. So this is, of course, demanding, but this demanding is an investment. The more time you spend as a customer with the team, the more you will get back. So again, product vision, product goals. The team will start feeling you, start feeling your organization. They will start feeling your product. They will start empathizing and learning how exactly do you think. What are your thinking patterns? Also, for time and material, you need to align your internal processes up front so that you are ready to produce a refined requirement in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a standard time for a sprint, and you need to make sure that you're able to get back with the feedback to the software house if they need a requirement to be refined and aligned inside of your organization. So this might be a demanding part of the time and material thing, but this demand triggers better cooperation. The next topic is, I like this quote from George Washington: "It's not the lowest priced goods that are always the cheapest," but coffee machine illustrated in this slide is a perfect example, right? That you very often, you must have heard about coffee machines that costed less, but the famous capsules for those coffee machines are making coffee pretty expensive for you to brew. So same with software houses, change requests. If you have a fixed price project and you officially place a change request, they will be priced very carefully, right? Remember that nothing will be for free. So this is, some people claim that this is actually somehow software vendors actually make their money. In fixed time projects, time and cost are fixed variables. So I'm sure you've heard about the iron triangle. Quality is a flexible variable, right? So for fixed price projects, this and this cannot be moved, right? So if this cannot be moved and it still needs to be a triangle, this will move. Let me refrain from further comment. I hope this will be something that will trigger your imagination and something that will help you to take the right decision. Another nice quote is that one from Henry Ford. I can imagine that he said that after creating his factory, when he was giving an interview in which he told the story of his life, of his invention, of his business. He said that if I had asked the public what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. I think what it says perfectly well is that imagining things up front is a limiting factor. It limits the execution team with requirements, again, defined up front. While tight budgets might actually boost solutioning and efficiency. I think as the scope document very often is a very detailed scope document is a killer for innovation and creativity. And it actually becomes a cage because people will only act inside of that small space that they have to move, right? So they probably won't be able to act in any independent way and innovative way as well. So how can you best manage your risk? There's a lot of text here in this slide, but for fixed price, first of all, don't go for fixed price with big projects, only for small projects. And if that's an innovative product, also don't involve in fixed price engagements. If your project is small enough and it really has to be a fixed budget project, make sure that you decompose your requirements into smaller pieces and analyze them carefully. Spend time to discover who are your stakeholders, ask their approvals, involve them in the process of defining the requirements. Ask your vendor to hire an experienced project manager and business analyst to know how to work in such projects. This will save the delivery team a lot of bad blood, and the better it will positively affect the mentality and create the team spirit if they know how to manage the relationship between the vendor and the supplier in such a relationship. Define practical guidelines, how to interpret requirements. So try to say whether the requirements should be interpreted in very explicitly, or is there any room for interpretation available so that people don't spend ages on semantic arguments. And also make sure that you accept that the risk vendor will apply a risk buffer. For time and material, assign an experienced product owner. So product owner is the key role in this particular pricing model. Make sure that you have defined an internal decision-making process. Have it clear who decides on what inside of your organization, since you'll have to get back promptly to the development team, not to hold them up. Think in terms of needs rather than requirements and designs, right? So since everything is subject to change, think what you need. Do not think how it should look like and how it should work, how it should be designed. Try to set a few checkpoints still based on those needs that will tell you how are you doing against your time to market plans and budget plans. And if need be, adjust your plans based on this and based on, of course, the limitations that you have inside of your own organization. Last but not least, give feedback frequently and utilize the ceremonies that are provided to you for Agile. Things like refinement, retrospectives, demos, to frequently get back with your feedback to the team. Otherwise, you might be misunderstood, and feedback is a cornerstone of working in using the time and material engagement model. Thank you very much.